So we haven't done one of these for a while. Let's do a brochure review. Now, it's common knowledge I quite like Fords. Well, I really like Fords. Actually, I've never owned one though, sadly. So something I need to rectify at some point in the future. But yeah, sadly, I've never owned a Ford. But I've got a particular soft spot for Fords of the 70s and 80s. So when I was younger, I used to get various Ford cars brochures from the local Ford dealer in the area, which was Buncombe's Garage in Highbridge at the time. And this isn't one of those brochures, but this is one from January 1980, which I got from a recent NEC Classic Car show. And they always seem to follow the same sort of format. So you start off with the Fiesta, and you go through the Fiesta all the way up to the XR2 or Fiesta 1300S or Gear or whatever it was at that particular point. Then you go through the Escorts all the way up to top of the range Escorts. Then through the Cortinas to the top of the range Cortinas or Sierras, depending on whatever was out at the time. Then the Capris to the top of the range, and then the Granadas all the way to the top of the range. And it was always sort of quite fun to sort of go straight to the back to look at the most top of the range Granada that was available at the time. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through and have a look at the sort of various Fords which are available back in January 1980. So there's a special edition Mark II here, the Ford Escort Lynette, January 1980, yep. And this would have been one of the last Mark IIs because Project Erica was very close to being released, that being the Mark III Escort. Anyway, let's take a look. So we've got the Ford Fiesta. Oh, what a beautiful baby. It's a strange tagline, but anyway. Start with the base model Fiesta, with this rather nice red interior, which looks fun. What kind of advertising do we have? Oh, we've got a front air dam for improved straight line stability, or what kind of features rather. Printed circuit instrument wiring. That's definitely a selling feature. Hazard warning flashes, lovely. Self-adjusting clutch, actually that is quite a good feature. Electric engine fan, boosts economy, I guess. Boosts economy rather. Oh, it does come with the 1100 as well, or you can have it with the 950cc engine, which is surprisingly miserable. Then we go on to the Fiesta L, which looks a little bit nicer inside with this hawk's tooth style interior, actually houndstooth rather nice. Got the radio there as well, and they always were quite spacious in the back, which was sort of one of the sort of things that I remember about our Mark I Fiesta, which was in Nova Green Metallic. So that would have been a 1980 car, BOU 180V, if I remember rightly. And that was actually it was a Fiesta GL, which they don't seem to have here. But yes, it was a Fiesta GL 1100, and it had a really nice deep chocolate brown interior. It was actually quite a pleasant car, to be honest with you. It's the car that I learnt to drive in. Then we have the Fiesta S. This would have been superseded by probably the XR2. This had a 1300 Kent Crossflow, also available with an 1100 as well. And the XR2, which wasn't released at this time, had a 1600 Crossflow. Top of the range, we've got the Gear, which was very nicely appointed actually. Lots of real plastic fake wood from the imitation tree. and some nice sort of various wood cappings on various bits of the interior. But it had those rather nice 12-inch, or were they 13? No, they were 12-inch alloy wheels in that sort of typical style that you had at the time for Ford. And just generally a very nicely appointed car, nice inside and nicely equipped as well. Not bad at all. Then we move on to the Mark II Escort. Funny enough, that was the colour that the Fiesta we had was in. I think that is Nova Green. Jade Green was similar, although I think Jade Green was slightly darker. So this was sort of like a lighter, vibrant metallic green, but still a really nice colour. This was Nordic Blue, which was a similar sort of colour to Olympic Blue. And this was the Escort Popular. So that either had an 1100 or 1300cc engine. Then we've got the Escort L in that rather nice Nova Green, again with the is that houndstooth or hawk's tooth? Houndstooth interior. Then the Escort GL with this rather vibrant red interior. Also does have a clock, which was a nice feature, and a radio. And it also has the square halogen headlights, which was more of a sort of like a styling exercise than anything else. And that was available with a 1300 or 1600 engine. Oh, the 1600 came with a twin Venturi carburettor. So in other words, almost, I suppose you could think of it as two carburettors in one, whereas the 1300 just had a single Venturi carb. Then we got the Escort Sport. That was available with the 1300 or 1600 engines. Twin Venturi carbs, 4-branch exhaust, close ratio gearbox, high lift cam, larger valves, and automatic choke on the 1600. So it wasn't just a standard engine. It did have a faster cam. It did have larger valves and other things, which genuinely gave it a performance advantage over the standard 1600. And then top of the range, we got the Escort Gear, and that actually had the same engine, looking at it, as the Sport. So yeah, looking at that, you've got 4-branch exhaust manifold, close ratio gearbox, high lift cam, larger valves. So that had, you could have basically a luxurious version of the Sport, which is quite nice. And personally, I probably would have gone for the Gear, although did this have better suspension? Yeah, that did have better suspension than the Sport steering wheel. So yeah, that's a bit of a quandary. But the Gear just looks nicer inside. Many years ago, I was offered a Mark II Gear in Sahara Gold, I think it was, and I kick myself for not purchasing it because it was a very low owner car. It had the Gear alloys, and it was only £500. This would have been in the late 90s. And at the time I didn't have the space. So it's that perpetual thing, you don't have the space and you don't have the cash available at the time, but hindsight is 20/20, as they say. Anyway, on to the estates. So we've got the GL estate all the way up to here. And actually it'd be interesting to see what kind of differences the performance made. So what's, yeah, so, oh, here we are, yeah, 1300 standard. So 1300 standard, 14.7 seconds 0 to 60. However, in the Sport and the Gear, you've knocked off a good couple of seconds of that time to 12 seconds and 12.3 seconds for the Gear, which pretty good, actually, to be honest with you. It's not bad at all. Anyway, on to the Cortina. So this would have been the Cortina 80, which was basically a very comprehensive facelift of the Mark IV. Commonly referred to as the Mark V, although technically it's not a Mark V, it's a Mark IV facelift, much in the same way the Mark III Capri is a Mark II facelift, or the Capri Carla, as it's also known. It's Project Carla, I think, if I remember rightly. Differences between the Mark IV and inverted commas Mark V: larger doors, centre vents, revised interior options, larger rear lights incorporating fog lights, a number of other refinements, including, I think, also better rust proofing as well. Now, these two doors were not very popular over here, which is a shame, because on the continent you could get the two-door Cortina through the whole range of trim options, although over here you could only have it as the base model saloon and the Cortina L. When you went up to the GL, you didn't have any two-door option, which was a shame, because it would have been quite nice to have a two-door gear 2.3 V6. That would have been quite entertaining. The GL, it was a nice mid-range option. A lot of people in my family, a couple of uncles had GLs when they were sort of current. So one of them had a 2-litre Estate in diamond white, and another one had a 2-litre GL Saloon in Apollo green, and I think he also had, before that, he had a 2-litre gear in Caribbean blue, when they were sort of still, sort of current cars. And the GL was just a nice, it was just a nice car. It's just, there's enough comfort, there's enough features. It had the 2-litre engine, or the option of the 2-litre engine. You could also get the 2.3 V6 as well. It was just, it was just a nice... Can't really think of anything else to say. It was just a good option. You had everything that you needed, really, plus a few little luxuries on top. It had enough boasting rights in the company car park, because you had the GL. You didn't just have the L or the Saloon. You had the GL. So it was pretty good. It was a good option. But the top of the range was the gear. And although, yes, the gear is very nice, I always weirdly preferred the GL. I don't know why. Normally I would go straight to the top of the range, but with the Cortina, the GL just seemed to be the one that was affordable. Everybody could have or aspire to the GL, whereas the gear was a little bit more expensive, a little bit less common, and just didn't seem as attainable, certainly when new. I mean, if we look at this, we've got the centre console in the gear, but we've also got the centre console in the GL as well. So really all you're gaining is slightly nicer interior trim and a rev counter. And that's it, really. So just go for a GL. Anyway, onto the estates and also the colours. So favourites of mine, probably all the greens. So Highland, which was a solid colour, and a love-or-hate colour, but I always rather liked it. Nova Green and Apollo Green. But also Strato Silver and Cosmos Blue were quite a nice range of colours as well. In fact, that Escort I was offered may have been Solar Gold rather than Sahara. I can't remember the age. Yeah, it was a V registration as well. So, yeah, that would have been Solar Gold. I think it was owned from new as well by the person whom owned it at the time. Their mother owned it, and then they inherited it. And in the late 90s, they were looking to move it on. I was offered the car, but yeah, finances, etc. I kick myself now, but hey, what can you do? Now, the S-Packs, they were always interesting because you had the option of improved suspension. You also could get the tachometer as well, which if you had the GL was always quite a nice addition. You could also get the tachometer on the L version as well, and the nicer sort of GL onwards spec steering wheel. I think, though it doesn't say here, you could also get Recaro front seats as well, which very uncommon and quite interesting to see in a Cortina. One of my favourite cars of all time, the Capri. Absolutely love them. My parents had a 3-litre gear automatic, and can I find a photo of it? Yeah, I've actually got 2 photos of our Capri. So we've got that one there, so that's me, and that's our Capri. And it looked fantastic. You had the gold pinstripe down the side, you had the wind deflector there on the sunroof, and under the gear badge was a Union flag, even though the car was built in Cologne. But we'll skip past that. But that was a wonderful car. And there's another one of me in my Street Hawk tracksuit. Again with the Capri, but as you can see, I love that car. Absolutely adore the bloody thing. And we had it for a number of years, but it went in the end, sadly, as these things always do. And it died at some point in 1994 with the owner that had it after us. But yeah, that was, yeah, happy memories of that car, very happy memories. So they do hold a bit of, I do have a soft spot for them, to be honest with you. Even the base model, I rather like. I mean, they're just such a good looking car. Just, you know, that sort of the bonnet bulge, the long front, the cool rear window, the sleek back. There's just not really an angle that the Capri Carla or Mark III doesn't look good from. It looks great from the front, it looks great from the side, it looks good at the back. There isn't really sort of any angle that it looks awkward from. I mean, side-on profile there, it just looks fantastic. Such a good looking car. This one's the GL, so this would have had a few features over the L. Mainly nicer interior trim options. The vinyl roof, which you only got on early Mark IIIs. And this one is in Sirius Red with chocolate Windsor fabric trim. It was that chocolate Windsor fabric trim that we had in the Fiesta, funnily enough. Then we got the gear, and the gear was available with 1600, 2-litre or 3-litre V6 options. The 3-litre V6 had uprated suspension and I've completely forgotten. Power steering, yeah. This is the Capri S. So, got the Carla interior trim. Also available with Recaro seats as well. So, that was always an interesting option. And then the gear had these rather sort of interesting sculpted buckets with, I can never remember if these were adjustable head restraints or not. It's not something I remember. They do look separated, so they may be actually adjustable. We had the 3-litre, as I sort of stated earlier, and what was nice about the 3-litre gear was it didn't really shout at you like the 3-litre S did visually. It was far more subtle, and Ours was the automatic as well, so very lazy car to drive from what I remember my mum sort of telling me about it, but my mum loved it as well. It's one of the cars that she always regrets us getting rid of because it was just such, I don't know, it was just a car that sort of appealed to, well, everybody in the family. My mum loved it, my dad liked it, I loved it. It was just one of those cars that was sort of perfect for all of us, and I think that's why they did do so well. Was they were the perfect car for a growing family. I mean, that hatchback, so much practicality with the seats down, spacious in the back for me at the time. And I often got to sit in the front as well. And one of my sort of early memories is, well, not early memories, but one of my sort of more endearing memories is being sat in the front, sunroof open, windows down, hot summer's day, doing 70 miles an hour on the A39 from Glastonbury to Bridgewater. Tina Turner blaring out of the radio cassette or Ultravox or whatever my mum was playing at the time, and just such a nice car. Top of the range, got the Granada. So this is a pre-facelift, and the Mark II Granada was an unbelievably good reskin of the Mark 1, making it almost look like a completely new car, but you can still see that there is a Mark 1, especially there, the rear window. And I think the front door was the same as well, also the windscreen, although not 100% certain, but the front door was very similar. I don't think they're quite interchangeable, but they're very similar sort of shape and appearance. And under the skin, it is basically a Mark 1, albeit with Cologne engine options rather than the Essex V6 options. Always a very nice car. We used to have a 2.3L as a courtesy car from the Ford garage whenever the Capri was in for service, and it was always seemed to be the same. Always seemed to be the same 2.3L in it's either Cosmos or sort of a solid blue colour, and it always had sort of like quite a unique smell inside. It's sort of quite this sort of weird plasticky sort of fabricy smell. It wasn't unpleasant, it was kind of actually quite pleasant. It was just that sort of typical Ford smell of the era. Next up was the GL, and GL was available with both the 2.3 and the 2.8, but also full instrumentation. You could also get the 2.8 litre injection model as well, with TRX tyres and sports suspension. Also had central lock-in and central boot lock-in as well. Top of the range is the Gear. There was no Gear X or Executive back then. It was top of the range being the Gear, and then you would add additional options as you saw fit. So you might go for the 2.8 injection with TRX wheels. You might, as in this case, add air conditioning. And this was the weird thing, Fords of the era, if it had air conditioning, you had green to denote cold instead of blue, which I always thought was unusual, but also quite cool at the same time. And these pre-facelift dash displays, in my view, I prefer them to the facelift, because you've got the two auxiliary gauges there, and then your main gauges here. And it just, I don't know, it just looks more in period, in keeping with the sort of the era. The facelift is still a very nice car though, and I would very happily consider a Mark II facelift. But the pre-face is mainly also due to rarity. Just has sort of the edge for me, sort of looks-wise, especially with the original grille and those very elegant rear lights. It's a very elegant car. Now, where things didn't really change very much from the Mark 1 is the estate. I mean, that is pure Mark 1 Granada, especially that side profile. But all the better for it, because it was a very good looking estate car. And especially in Mark II form here in this Apollo green, it looks fantastic, especially with the TRX wheels. And the nice thing about the Granada estate is you could have it across the whole range. There wasn't, certainly with lower models in the Ford range where it would say stop at the GL, there wasn't the case here. You could have a gear if you wanted, you could have an L, you could have a GL, everything available. Then we have the S-Packs. So the GLS, that was quite nice, 2.8 injection, had TRX wheels, which were the new thing at the time, and they had a number of advantages over standard tyres. One of those advantages being the ability to run flat safely without the tyre leaving the rim. So you wouldn't be able to continue driving, but you could safely get yourself pulled off onto a lay-by and then be able to sort of safely change the wheel, but the car would remain under full control during that period of deflation and pulling off. Something they always did was the diesel, which was an old, well, not old then, but a unit shared with Peugeot. So you would have seen this engine in 2.1 and 2.3 litre forms in the Peugeot 504 and 505. And there was also the taxi option as well, which was quite interesting. So they certainly aimed the car at the Bursley minicab market of the time. Then we come to the various Ford options. So signal paint, so that was your signal colours, and they were optional. And although big in the 70s, sort of coming into the 80s, you didn't really sort of see them beyond about sort of 1981, 82, so they were sort of on the way out around this time. So the whole trend was to sort of more darker metallics, pastel shades, etc. Remote driver's door mirror, passenger door mirror, sports road wheels, alloy wheels, electric windows, etc. You could get all of these options, mostly in some cases dealer fit, but obviously the paints are not dealer fit because they've got to be specified when the car's new. Same with the automatic transmission, but other things would be dealer fit, especially wheel options and mirror options. These are the various options you could get across the range. So what could we get with the Cortina? We could have a clock. Headlamp pressure jet washers. Headlamp pressure jet washers with overriders, which was optional on the gear. And the pressure jet with overriders was optional on the L and GL. Head restraints, standard on GL and gear, optional on the saloon and L. Rear seat belts, all saloons optional. At this point, rear seat belts weren't standard, but provisions were there for you to fit them. That was quite common on sort of cars in the 80s. And what else could you get? Power assisted steering, power operated radio antennae, and so power assisted steering was available. Oh yeah, you could get that on the 2 litres, and it was standard on the 2.3s. Capri options, well, vinyl roof optional on all models. Black body colour optional on the S. That's interesting. Optional on the S, but not on any other model. Whereas the Capri that we had was black and a gear. So, but that was a 79 car. So that may have been a special order. Who knows? And nothing else really optional bar the various radio cassette options. Interestingly, the stereo cassette we had in the Gear was optional. So somebody had actually paid money for black body colour and the radio cassette. Interesting. Granada options. So air conditioning was £618, £770 and 28 pence, which that's almost the equivalent now of probably nearly £2,500. That's a lot of money. You can see why not many people went for it, but you could have it across the range. Optional on the 2.3L, GL and Gear. Not standard on anything. You couldn't have it on the 2 litre, but you could have it on the 2.3 and 2.8s because that's kind of what it was set up for. Halogen headlamps, optional on the diesel, but standard on L, GL and Gear. Driving lamps, there we are. Optional on the GL and Gear. And driving lamps with overriders, optional on the L and diesel. Now, I've actually got a video on my channel of fitting driving lamps onto a 2.8 Gear, and it's unbelievably easy. All you need to do is provide wiring from a single connector on the offside driver's side inner wing area, provide a relay and provide the lamps. That's literally it. The brackets are already there. And right at the end, the RS2000. Another fantastic Escort, and unbelievably good for the time, especially that 0 to 60 figure of 8.5 seconds. Top speed, not that great, but the acceleration was superb. And from what I remember, it was a fun car to drive. Very sporty. Wish I'd owned one at some point, but hey, not to worry. And there we go. That's the end of the brochure. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.